The night I told a complete stranger, "You can stay until morning," I thought I was offering her a few hours of shelter. I had no idea I was about to offer someone a reason to live again, and that before sunrise, she would ask me a question that would change my life forever. She stood outside my apartment door in the pouring rain, soaked to the skin, trembling so badly that she could barely hold the small, worn-out bag against her chest. There was fear in her eyes, but beneath it was something even more painful, the look of someone who had stopped believing that anyone would care what happened to her next. Before we continue, if stories about kindness, second chances, and unexpected human connections touch your heart, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to True Kindness Stories for more emotional stories about second chances. Sometimes, one small act of kindness can become the beginning of an entirely new life. My name is Daniel, and at that time, I lived alone in a small apartment at the end of an old building. I had become comfortable with loneliness. My wife had passed away 2 years earlier after a long illness, and after losing her, I had slowly stopped inviting people into my life. Her photographs were still on the shelves, her favorite mug still sat in the kitchen cabinet, and sometimes I caught myself turning toward the empty side of the bed as if I expected to hear her breathing. I went to work, came home, ate dinner alone, and repeated the same routine every day. I wasn't unhappy exactly. I was simply existing. That rainy night, I had just returned from work when I heard someone knocking softly. At first, I thought it was one of my neighbors, but when I opened the door, I saw her. She looked exhausted. Her coat was thin, her shoes were soaked, and her hands were red from the cold. She apologized immediately, as though simply standing there was an inconvenience. She told me she had nowhere to go and asked if I knew of a cheap hotel nearby. I knew she couldn't afford one. Something about the way she avoided my eyes reminded me of my wife during the hardest days of her illness, someone trying desperately not to become a burden. I hesitated for only a few seconds before saying, "You can stay until morning." She looked at me as though she hadn't understood. I repeated myself and stepped aside. She entered cautiously, holding her bag close. I gave her a towel, made some tea, and found an old sweater that belonged to my wife. She held it against herself for a moment before putting it on, and when she finally sat on the sofa, tears silently rolled down her cheeks. I pretended not to notice because sometimes people need dignity more than questions. Her name was Anna. She didn't tell me everything that night, only that she had left a difficult situation and couldn't return. She said she had been trying to save enough money to start over, but something had gone terribly wrong. I didn't press her. I made her a simple meal, and she ate slowly, as if she had forgotten what it felt like to eat without fear. Around midnight, the rain became heavier. Anna sat near the window watching the water run down the glass. I was about to go to bed when she turned toward me with a small, almost embarrassed smile and asked, "What if I never leave?" The question caught me completely off guard. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. I looked at the woman sitting on my sofa, wearing my wife's old sweater, surrounded by the quiet memories of the person I had lost. And strangely, for the first time in years, my apartment didn't feel empty. I smiled and told her that morning could wait. The next few weeks were complicated. Anna insisted on finding work immediately. She cleaned the apartment even when I told her she didn't have to, cooked dinner when she could, and slowly began filling the rooms with ordinary sounds again. She laughed at silly television shows. She complained when I forgot to buy milk. She watered the plants that I had nearly allowed to die. Little by little, the apartment became a home again. But Anna carried invisible wounds. Loud noises frightened her. She woke from nightmares. Sometimes she would stand at the door with her bag packed, convinced she was staying too long. Each time, I reminded her that she wasn't a burden. I helped her prepare a resume and drove her to interviews. Eventually, she found work at a small bakery across town. I thought that would be the moment everything changed. Instead, it became the beginning of another struggle. Anna started saving money and looking for a small place of her own. I told myself that was good. It was what I had promised her from the beginning. But when she mentioned moving out, I felt an ache I couldn't explain. One evening, she found me sitting beside my wife's photograph. She quietly asked whether I missed her. I told her I missed everything, the mornings, the arguments, the little habits, even the things that used to annoy me. Anna sat beside me and said something I'll never forget: grief doesn't disappear when someone leaves, it simply becomes a room inside your heart. You learn to live there without locking the door. That night, I realized Anna hadn't only been rescued by me. She had rescued me too. Months passed. Anna eventually found a small apartment, but she didn't move immediately. She wanted to be certain she could stand on her own. I helped her carry boxes when the day finally came. Her new home was tiny, but she stood in the middle of it smiling like someone who had just been handed the world. Before leaving, she hugged me tightly. Then she whispered that she had once asked what would happen if she never left because she was terrified that she would eventually be abandoned again. She said she hadn't expected me to answer with patience instead of fear. I told her the truth: I had once believed kindness meant saving someone. Now I understood that sometimes kindness simply means giving someone enough safety to discover that they can save themselves. Anna smiled through her tears and left. For the first time since my wife died, I closed my apartment door without feeling lonely. I understood that love doesn't always arrive as romance, and family isn't always connected by blood. Sometimes a stranger enters your life during the worst storm of theirs, and without realizing it, they help you survive your own. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it, and subscribe to True Kindness Stories. Your support helps these stories reach people who may be silently struggling and need to remember that one kind person can make a difference. And before the ending, I want you to answer something honestly in the comments. Have you ever helped someone when you didn't know how their story would end? Tell us about it. Years later, Anna still visits me every Sunday. She brings fresh bread from the bakery where she eventually became a manager. She never comes empty-handed, but I always tell her she doesn't need to bring anything. One Sunday, she placed a loaf on the table and looked around my apartment. The photographs were still there, but beside my wife's picture was a new photograph, Anna and me standing together beneath the sunlight. She smiled and said, "You know, I really did stay until morning." I laughed and answered, "No, Anna. You stayed long enough to teach me that morning always comes." And perhaps that is what kindness really is. It isn't always a grand gesture. Sometimes it's an open door, a warm meal, an old sweater, or simply telling someone who has lost all hope, "You can stay until morning." Because sometimes, morning is all a broken heart needs to believe in tomorrow.